Today's parable, still coming from Matthew, we're kind of just plugging along, comes from Matthew 20, starting at verse 1. For the kingdom of heaven is like a master of a house who went out early in the morning to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the laborers for a denarius a day, he sent them into his vineyard. Going out about the third hour, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace and said, "You go to the vineyard too, and whatever is right I will give you." So they went. Going out again about the sixth hour and the ninth hour, he did the same. And about the 11th hour, he went and found others standing. He said, "Why do you stand here idle all day?" They said, "Because no one has hired us." He said, "You go into the vineyard too." And when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the laborers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last up to the first." And when those hired about the 11th hour came, each of them received a denarius. Now when those hired first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received a denarius. And on receiving it, they grumbled at the master of the house, saying, "These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." He replied to one of them, "Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for a denarius? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give this last worker as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or do you begrudge my generosity? So the last will be first, and the first last." And we read this in church, in service at Edgewater, either this past week, maybe 2 weeks ago. And someone came up to me about it because it kind of hit them on a more personal level, which is always cool. But it brought me to understand this parable in a couple different lights, which is cool. So the way I've always kind of read and understood this parable personally is, don't begrudge. It's a kingdom parable, right? So don't begrudge people who come to the faith later in life for the fact that they're just as saved as you are. You know, someone who has a deathbed conversion and they lived outside the faith their entire life, and moments before their death, the Holy Spirit works faith in their hearts. They're just as saved as someone who was baptized, a week after they were born, is in the church their entire life, continues to be in the church their whole life, and dies on the church and in the faith. They're both going to heaven. So I've always understood this as like, don't begrudge that Christian who's coming to the faith later in life. But I think this passage also kind of teaches us a more practical lesson in that don't begrudge other people's generosity in general, right? So an example might be if you are doing the same job as someone else and they're getting paid more than you are. That's great for them. Like, celebrate the fact that they're benefiting from generosity. But we live in a world where we're pushed more, or our sinful nature even, I'm not even going to say we live in a world, our sinful nature pushes us to say, well, if they're getting paid more, I should get paid more. So I think there's a secondary lesson here of stop comparing yourself to other people. Do they get paid more? Did they get more time off? Did they get better benefits? I'm saying all these things to try and move me out of the job language, and it's not helping at all. For kids, did they get more screen time than you did? Who cares? They got lucky. Celebrate it with them. Stop comparing yourself to others and using that to leverage yourself up is, I guess, a more here and now kind of application of this parable. So that's the parable of the laborers in the vineyard. Brothers and sisters, go in peace. Serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.